Welcome to Pod Applaud, the Monday and Friday podcast that aims to enable your podcast habit. I'm your host, Seb, and today we are going the furthest from home we've ever been to check out the Prancing Pony Podcast. To celebrate listening to 11 days, yes, I said that right, 2,064 hours of podcast, I decided to listen to a collection of Lord of the Rings and Tolkien-centric podcasts. This search brought me to the Prancing Pony Podcast. This show is a topical deep dive in analysis by hosts Sean and Alan that focuses upon the works of J.R.R. Tolkien. Episodes are usually at least an hour long. More often than not, the show stretches past the hour-and-a-half mark. There are currently 128 episodes, and you can expect a new episode to be released weekly on their current upload schedule. When I first started listening to podcasts that covered pop media, it seemed that covering a TV series one episode at a time was an obvious idea. Then I saw books covered one chapter at a time, and I thought, okay, maybe this is a little granular, especially for some books that have short chapters. Now I'm seeing podcasts about a single movie that analyze 1 minute of the film per episode. So what do I know? Our hosts are humble yet honorific worthy Tolkieners. Between the two of them, they can pull so much discussion and analysis out of a single chapter that it is mind-boggling. First, they started with the Silmarillion, which is currently where I'm at in the podcast. They have since finished the Silmarillion and The Hobbit and are now working on the Fellowship of the Ring. So if you're not sure whether the Silmarillion is up your alley, you can get in on more familiar ground. If you're a fan of world building, lore, or mythology, you owe it to yourself to check out the Silmarillion. J.R.R. Tolkien was perhaps one of the greatest world builders that's ever lived. And from what I can tell, reading through the Silmarillion will change your life. Personally, I have never managed to read through the dense book, but I have read books such as Beren and Luthien. The Prancing Pony host would probably prefer I read through it myself, but I'm getting so much out of listening to their analysis. I'm looking forward to finishing their coverage and going back to read it with more immersion, since I don't have to constantly think about how I should be pronouncing names in my head. Listening to the average episode, you will get some good-hearted humor, some passages read by the soothing tones of Sean and Alan, and a curious, insightful approach to analyzing the books. A lot of the hard-to-get-through stuff in Tolkien's Legendarium is made a bit easier to get into through the lens of the show. The hosts work their magic and work it well, but some foes are beyond any of us. In particular, I believe it was episode 11, in which even our prancing pair couldn't get me on board with all the delineations and categorizations of elves. Perhaps that was my bad, since I should probably be reading along. In fact, the host even encouraged you to follow along with specific printings of the books, so you can reference page numbers along with them. These pages include things like maps and genealogy charts, so maybe that would have helped with the whole 20 different categories of elves ordeal. I feel that, similar to Tolkien's work, the more involved you get, the greater the return when you listen to the Prancing Pony. So, if you are going to delve in, go all the way. Here on Pod Applaud, I rate shows on a 1 to 5 scale. 1 is silence, 2 is a slow clap, 3 is applause, 4 is a round of applause, and 5, of course, is a standing ovation. I would give the Prancing Pony a 4 to 5, a round of applause. My ability to judge this podcast is admittedly a bit lacking. Just listening to the podcast, even without reading the source material, is already really enjoyable. Having the proper copy of the books on hand will surely yield an even greater experience than the one I'm having. I've little doubt that this is the best Tolkien podcast I have encountered, especially if you're going to become part of the community. I'm going to keep listening and maybe get a Kindle copy of the Silmarillion to enhance the experience. Few podcasts sway me from my usual approach of jumping around to find new shows towards becoming more active in a single community, but I find the Prancing Pony to be very tempting. That's been the show for today. If you found it valuable, be sure to subscribe for more podcast reviews. If you wish to reach out or follow me, you can find me on Twitter @podapplaud or visit podapplaud.com, where you can find further contact information and transcripts for each episode. Thank you for listening, and please tune in again.